I don't know how you do your job in this environment because there is so much going on, not just what Jody was talking about, also the Brexit chaos, U.S. China, the climate concerns. Is it time to move to New Zealand and get into a bunker?
Almost. We're heading in that direction. It is quite extraordinary. And what's interesting about most of the things you just mentioned is that the normal rules of analysis don't really work anymore. This is strange territory, particularly in the UK. It seems very arcane and slightly weird from the outside what's happening in the UK, with all these complicated processes about proroguing Parliament, but it's brand new territory. This is a journey without maps. We've not been here before.
It's brand new territory in all of these risks that we're talking about. Is Brexit the one that you're most focused on, though?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think in the end of the day, it's fairly binary. Britain's either going to leave the European Union or it's not. And the likelihood still is that it will. It may not happen by the 31st of October, but it probably will happen at some time after that. So I think the likely outcome is pretty known. The precise details around how it's going to happen are unclear still, but I think markets are kind of the view that we're heading in that direction. I think, obviously, the trade situation between the United States and China still remains the kind of #1 top risk. And we saw over the last few days how the president, when he was up in New York for the UN General Assembly, kind of talks tough about China. Then 2 days later, he tweets something more conciliatory about the possibility of a deal happening perhaps sooner than people think. And that's the pattern. That's what he does. 1 minute he's sort of hammering his fist on the table about China. The next he's kind of suggesting an olive branch may be on its way. And that's going to be the strategy, I think, right through to the election. He's got broad bipartisan support for a bit of China bashing. He's in no hurry probably to do a deal. And likewise, I think the Chinese have the fortitude and the resilience to wait this out. So I don't see any imminent change. And meanwhile, that has this undermining effect on global confidence in the economy.
Right. So, Richard, David here in Hong Kong. We've talked about Brexit and we've talked about this trade spat or strategic rivalry between the U.S. and China. I mean, markets deal in probabilities. In terms of what is least probable but gives you the highest amount, say, of downside right now, what would that risk be? What's still a tail risk? But if it does happen, we're probably all in trouble. And as Jules was pointing out, we're probably headed to New Zealand.
Right. I mean, there's got to be the prospect of the president actually being impeached would have a very tumultuous effect on global politics, and that would be bound to spill over into obviously into markets as well. But I think that's so unlikely to happen. You remember the president may be in a pickle here because it's unclear exactly kind of where blame lies, but he also derives enormous energy from this. And if it's going to be uncomfortable for him, it's going to be equally uncomfortable, if not more so, for Joe Biden. I think the event that would potentially send us all to New Zealand would be some kind of outbreak of some kind of war in the Middle East as a consequence of what's happening with Iran. Again, I think the likelihood of that happening is low, but it's not insignificant. And that, of course, is probably the thing that would really throw the kind of world into disarray.